Hi, I will be interviewing my mom.
Jennifer.
So the first question is, considering what is right or wrong, what are some of your ethical non-negotiables, meaning that there are some things you will or not do?
Well, mainly what's very important to me is people's feelings and their rights. I never want to hurt anyone, and I make that a priority in my life. I don't like to see any suffering, and it's ruled my life really since I was little. I always felt that, if I saw some unfairness, I would get very emotional, and that really, I guess back then I really didn't even understand that that was a moral compass that you have when you can make grow, but that you're in charge of, and it's a very powerful compass that you'd have, and you can really use it to gauge everything in your life. But really, people's rights and their feelings, and of course of physical harm, would always really bother me, and I was always very aware of that from an early age.
So would you say another part of your ethics are that you would act in a situation that you thought was wrong, or are you more just about helping the person afterwards?
I always think about that. If I were on that show, would you do the right thing? If I would have the courage, and I hope I would. But I remember when I was young, I was really upset by learning about slavery and learning about the Holocaust, and my mother had to write a note that I had to be exempt from seeing certain films because I was so sensitive and I really couldn't let it go. And when I was little, I used out of my allowance. My mom helped me set up with UNICEF, and I sponsored a child from another country, and I wrote letters and was able to, I used my own money, but sometimes my mom would help me, and I sponsored a child that had hunger issues when I was young, and that was very fulfilling to me, and that's something I feel very proud of. So I do feel like I hope I would, if something happened and I could intervene in a situation that was happening, I do feel like I would try to step in and help.
Okay, you probably look at me too.
Okay.
Okay, next question. What are some of the most impactful influences on the way you developed your personal ethical standards, such as family, friends, community, work, culture, and religion and spirituality?
Okay, so I was raised Roman Catholic, and that affected me a lot because there was so much about right and wrong and how you had to repent your sins every week. So I was always aware of trying not to be a sinner even when I was little, even if it meant saying a bad word or fighting with my sisters. And that, I guess, affected me a lot. And my dad was a police officer, so I felt like he was trying to do the right thing. And my parents were good people in the community and helped out a lot, so that helped me. And also just that sense of, I always wondered, like, if somebody was hurt, even if it was in a movie, I would think it would just hurt, it would just stay with me, and I would just wonder what they felt. So I feel like I had that in me to start with, but I did have a lot of positive influences in my life in all between school, religion, religious instruction, and other leadership people in my life.
And would you also say that you learned a lot of right and wrong based on making mistakes and then learning from your consequences, or just based on observation and understanding what was right and wrong in your head without having to first do something incorrectly?
No, I think I did learn from observing more than making mistakes, especially when I was young. I do feel that.
And then, since you were the oldest sibling, would you guide your younger sisters on teaching them ethics and making sure that they understood
Yeah, I think I did influence them in that way.
Okay, next question. In your lifetime, what was one of the greatest challenges to your ethics? What did you do to work through the situation? Who was involved, and what was the outcome?
Well, I feel like I did have a really good therapist who helped me to get through that challenge, because I used to have a lot of trouble standing up for myself and making decisions that to be my own advocate, and I never understood how other people could, no, I don't do that, or never any apologies, or they would always say yes or no whether or not they wanted to do something, and I always felt like I just wanted to please people, and if somebody asked me to do something, I would just say okay, and then I would, even if I didn't want to. So I had a therapist once who was really very influential, who said that everybody can create their own values and their own morals and their own principles of their life, and that was really a life changer for me. It was a complete game changer in my life, and that was, when my kids were little, so I guess I was able to harness that and help and be more powerful in my own life and be able to stand behind, it's enough to say that that's not for me, and that's not what I want to do. And that helped me to gain the power and to realize that it is in my control. There aren't other people's rules, and it made me feel a lot more powerful, and I hope I instilled that in my girls.
What would you consider to be unethical behavior?
I think, I'm thinking unethical more as, I go straight to more like criminal behavior,
that works.
Because I don't like to see, of course most people don't, but it really affects me if someone is hurt, or someone, people steal, or they're selling drugs and they'll just kill people for no reason just to get ahead, or hurt people, or steal, or hit, or, all that kind of unjustness is what I consider the most egregious of things, is hurting other people.
And then would you say, just aside from like criminals, also just people who like use other people as stepping stones for their own?
Yes, absolutely, very much so.
Did you see any of that during your career or growing up?
I guess I would say I did realize that there were givers and takers, and that my family was very much givers, so we always, and I don't even know if my parents understood like codependence or that kind of thing, but I do think that I lost my train of thought a little bit, but unethical behavior.
That like taking advantage of somebody.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what you were saying. Yeah, I do feel like taking advantage is bad. And especially if you see someone that is the other extreme, and they're kind of either weak, or they don't have the will to say what they really want to do or not. To take advantage of people like that, I do think is unethical. And you're just preying upon other people, and that should not happen.
And are there any like specific unethical things that you taught like your kids not to do?
I think I taught them to treat others well, but also stand up for themselves. I taught them that people are all different, and you should respect, as long as others aren't hurting other people. You just really should do your best in every way and help others.
Okay. Is there a situation in your life when your behavior contradicted your ethics?
Yeah, when I was younger, when I just was saying yes to everything and not realizing that I had even the power to say no, I was a real people pleaser, and I used to work at a department store, and this is kind of embarrassing. I don't know if I told you, I may have, but I literally, somebody came in, my boyfriend's mom at the time, and asked me to not pay for clothes, and I was working at a store, and I didn't even do something like that for myself. I would never think of stealing, but she asked me to, she wanted those items, and she came in, and I put it in the bag, and I didn't have her pay, and I felt really bad about it because I was in such a dilemma about wanting to make other people happy that I literally broke the law and could have gotten in big trouble. So I do regret that, and hope that my girls, I was able to pass that on, that you never do something like that. And not even if I had something to gain. It wasn't even like she was going to give me money after, which would be bad too. But I mean, I really didn't even have anything to gain, and I still was so powerless. So I do regret that, of course, and that was a big conflict in my life that I had to get past. And luckily nothing bad came out of it.
What do you think is one of the most significant ethical issues today?
I just think that people in general are just thinking about money and how to get their own lives ahead, and people are less neighborly and less helpful to others. And I think we need to have a lot more community and people helping each other out instead of judging and just sitting on the sidelines and thinking that they're better than other people. So I do think I don't know what really it stems from, but I feel like people need to be more connecting with one another, more community events, more things like that, so that people get to see each other more and understand that we're all in this together. And that's the main thing, I think, is probably more of a grassroots way of helping problems that we're having in society.
Tell me what you consider to be good, right, wrong, or virtuous. So we'll start with what it is to be good, like a good person.
A good person is hopefully has some leadership, but just as willing to give their time and listen and try to give advice without being judgmental. So, if you can help people even in a small way, sometimes monetarily, something that you might consider a small amount of money could make a big difference to somebody else, and just to show kindness and listen and take the time with people is what I consider good.
What about right versus wrong?
I mean, right versus wrong is sometimes you do have to step in. If like I would always be afraid to say if somebody, hurt somebody's feelings, if I heard something they said and I thought they were headed in the wrong direction with whatever they were doing. But now I kind of have more confidence, I guess, to say in a kind way, why don't you think it over? There's other ways to do things. So in that way, I feel like I'm trying to be right, and I'm trying to help people. So it's not just being good, you can also help people with your voice and make changes. And I think that can help you be, right, because you're doing the right thing. Even you have to be a little more brave to step in and say something to somebody and hopefully make a change in that direction.
And then would you also say that right and wrong goes just beyond, like, being a law-abiding citizen?
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. I think whether or not something's legal doesn't mean, that you might not get caught, doesn't mean that it's not wrong. You should still consider that. And virtuous, I think, is to go really the full extreme of it's better than good, to just. 'Cause, 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 be out there and making the right calls, and to live by example is a big one for virtuous. And then getting back to good, which was something I wanted to state earlier, that in my religious upbringing when I was younger, I always would say, they'd say, oh, well, if you don't do this or that, you'd go to heaven or hell. And I would say, well, I don't want to do a good deed just because it would help me to get to heaven. I am not afraid of heaven or hell. I want to do the right thing because it makes me feel better as a person, and that's what I want to do, and I'm not guided by the fear of religious consequences or something like that.
And like doing something,
or going to prison
at the end of the day that'll just benefit you.
Right. Yeah, I'd rather, it always came from a point of not, the punishment aspect of it, but that I want to do the right thing because I want to be a good person, and not because I'm afraid of something bad happening to me if I went in the other direction.
And then maybe just, what are some of your personal ethics standards and that you hold others accountable to? So just some of your, values and morals and,
Yeah, I like to be fair. I feel like I like to be responsible. I want people to know they can come to me and I'm trustworthy, and if somebody needs help, I'll help them. I just want to treat people well. Even if somebody's filling up my gas tank, I always say please and thank you, and I'm always nice to people at the store. I just always want to give a smile and make sure that people feel valued and don't feel like they're being disregarded. So my standards are very high in that regard, and it's not because I'm trying to make myself feel better. I'm trying to make other people feel better and just break that cold feeling of everybody's in a rush and everybody just wants to put it off on the next person. It's not always easy driving an hour each way to work, being behind the wheel, so that's a different story when you get angry at somebody in the car, but I always try to hold it in and just say everybody's just trying to get to work and do what they're doing. So there are challenges, but I really think that people really should treat each other better, and it's getting to the point where hopefully it turns around, because there were years where people were really doing well together, and now it's more social media and more people aren't interacting together as much, so you feel separate. But when you really stop and talk to anybody, everybody pretty much wants the same things for themselves and for their families and for their friends and for society in general.
And how much of ethics in general would you say is universal versus just based on someone's opinion?
That's tricky. But I feel like as humans generally, people kind of know. You kind of know right from wrong. You have a feeling about it, and you can try to justify it different ways, but I think most people are born with knowing right from wrong. And then if they decide to go a different way, it's either they were hurt or I don't know what the reasons would be. Okay.
Would you say your personal ethical standard has evolved over time or not really?
It has evolved over time, and it's just because of me feeling more confident and me really knowing that I can say no. So I have my own standards now and my own set of values and morals, and I'm not afraid to say no in a kind way. So that gives me more power. So I don't feel like I'm always just putting out fires to please people to no end and to my own detriment. I feel like I'm being fair. I'm holding myself to a certain standard, so I try to lead by example, but I also will call somebody out generally more than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel like they're not headed in the right direction, or if they need a little pep talk or a tweak, and they're going to be, you know, in their own head too much and not thinking about how things will roll out. So that has changed. It certainly has evolved, because like I said, growing up, I really didn't even know that I had the ability or the power to be able to say no to somebody and not just always say yes and try to people please to the point where things were so out of control and I didn't have control over my life. But now that I do, I can help more people and help myself.
Is there anything you did when you were younger that you thought you didn't think was wrong, but now looking back at it, it might have been wrong?
I mean, just in general, not doing what was right for me first, because if everybody does what's right for them, then we can all get along better. It's not like some people are having bad behavior and you're always, what's that word, when you like allow somebody else to have bad behavior and you just put up with it. Yeah, you're like enabling, to enable other people's bad behavior just to try to keep the peace. And if that's not up to you, that because you're allowing somebody else to continue suffering just because you want whatever reasons you have, and that's a big one that had to be stopped. So I really do feel like I've mastered that to a certain extent.
Okay. Any last things you want to say? Any last ethical related stories you can think of?
I mean, it's just so important to know that you can set your own, and they can evolve, but you set your own values, your own standards, your own principles. And it's so freeing because they're the rules that you choose to live by. And that gives you the parameters to have control, to do what you want, and to have control over your own life, and to do the right thing, and to know why. And that's, I think, the key to life. If everybody really focused more on doing well themselves and to make themselves the best person they can be and that they're proud of and they're happy with, if we all just did that individually and kept our eye out to help others, we'd really be in good shape. So that was a very powerful thing that a therapist, like I said, had said to me years ago that really changed my life in a huge way. And I think that's the key.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.